The Four Noble Truths. How to explain the Four Noble Truths. I think you have heard of the Four Noble Truths. It's explained in many different ways. Of course, in a way that how a doctor prescribe problems in those times, in the Indian times, like the Four Noble Truths. There is suffering, so there's a condition, there's a cause for the suffering, so there's a reason for it. There is the cessation of suffering, so it's possible to get rid of it or be without it, and the way of doing it, the way of achieving this, basically, of getting rid of it or having it, going without it. The Noble Eightfold Path. So this is one of the explanations, but to a meditator that might not mean enough, let's say. It's a bit like if I would give you a recipe of how to make baked beans, these are the things you need, but there's no explanation how to use it and how to perform, what do you do first or not, but you just get ingredients, let's say. So the Four Noble Truths, one of the key aspects for a meditator, so if you want to internalize it, I would say is also what we call the 12 links. So you have 3 types, let's say you have 4 Noble Truths, and there are actually 3 versions of it, let's say. So the version that we just explained, or that I just explained, is let's say the conceptual part, so suffering, arising of suffering, cessation of suffering, and the way leading to the cessation of suffering. Okay, we know that, and now what, right? So what the teaching, the sutta, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the turning of the wheel, let's say one of the first suttas that the Buddha has taught to his 5 first disciples, where one of them, Kondanya, called enlightened, basically, because of this teaching. So what does it actually explain? The Buddha in that sutta also explains suffering. There is suffering statement. There's suffering. Okay. But he said the suffering should be understood. So one should understand suffering, understand what dukkha means. Now there's a whole video about dukkha, but one needs to understand it. And then the cause of suffering, there's a cause. What do we do with the cause? The cause needs to be let go of. We have to let go of the cause, what is creating suffering, as tanha, craving. Cessation of suffering needs to be experienced. So even though this exists, cessation of suffering, there's no suffering, but it's not like conceptually it's gone or something. So you have to experience it to understand what no suffering means. So you have to experience it. And the 4th is to understand how to cultivate the Noble Eightfold Path. So that's cultivation. So understanding, letting go, experiencing, and cultivating. So by saying this already, it sounds much more like an application, something you need to do. Like there's some action there. Rather than conceptually understand there's suffering, arising of suffering, cessation of suffering, and then we have the end, the cultivation, or like the Noble Eightfold Path, right? No. It's about, you need to understand suffering, you need to let go of it, you need to experience it, the cessation, and then you need to cultivate the Noble Eightfold Path. And by doing this, you will become more known about, like the more you do this, you will understand all the 3 others, so it's sort of combined. So that's level 2 of, let's say, of the message. So conceptual, what we all mostly learn, what we start with. Then what I just explained, the action, the application of it. And there's a 3rd level. The 3rd level is let's say, the ultimate level. Suffering has been understood, so fully understood. Suffering has been let go of, so completely let go of. The cessation has been fully experienced. And then we have the Noble Eightfold Path has been completely cultivated, mastered, basically. So you have these 3 levels, and that is all I would say for the Four Noble Truths. That often it's explained only on level 1, but for someone who needs, you wonder like, and so what? And for a meditator, I think level 2 is much more helpful, where they know how to apply these Four Noble Truths. And there's like a million ways, I don't know, maybe not a million, but lots of different ways of how you can practice this. And that's, I think, why it takes time. So conceptually to understand is one thing, but applying it and then refining it and understanding the Four Noble Truths internally, that is a challenge. So what makes an arahant, a fully enlightened or like an enlightened person, different than a non-enlightened person? That's the Four Noble Truths, that they understand the Four Noble Truths to its fullest. So that will be the main difference.